The CanAsian Arts Network recognizes and pays respects to the original people of this land. For time immemorial, Indigenous peoples have cared for and stewarded the lands known to many as Canada so that each of us today can benefit from all the gifts the land provides. Out of respect for the rights of Indigenous peoples, it is our collective responsibility to critically interrogate colonial histories and their present-day impacts. We therefore work from the perspective of honoring, protecting, and sustaining the land and the people who were first on this territory to move beyond acknowledgement and into the doing. Similarly, we recognize the impact of colonial history and structures on our own communities and of those of other people of color. We extend a hand in partnership to those who wish to move beyond allyship to become an accomplice in dismantling them. My name is Sean C. I'm a father, artist, and community organizer based in the Miskwachi Waskahikan, known as Edmonton, Treaty 6 territory, and Métis homeland. Through funding support from Canada Council for the Arts and administrative support from Festival Access Asie, the CanAsian Arts Network has created digital content to guide, mentor, inform, and educate equity-seeking artists, cultural workers, organizations, and festivals in Canada. This series of digital literacy workshops will cover a variety of topics on business administration and legal considerations, introduction to social media and digital marketing, and encourage ways to decolonize in the digital space. These workshops will be followed up by a series of community conversations and roundtable discussions with arts leaders to help us all learn from each other. Make sure to sign up at canasianarts.com to get links to all the online content. For this workshop, we're inviting Linda Huang to share their experiences in building visibility and engagement on social media. Welcome, Linda.
Hi, thanks for having me. Great, I'm just gonna share my screen. My caution is that I have so many animals in this house, so you may hear a dog or a cat pop up from time to time. But yeah, today I'm going to share some advice on using social media to basically increase your reach, your visibility, your engagement, kind of use it more effectively overall, and talk about how you might approach presenting your work and yourself as an Asian artist. So, hello. You can follow me online at Lindork. Officially, I'm a blogger and a content creator full time. So, I work with all sorts of businesses to create different types of social media content. I'm also a social media strategist, marketer. So, I also work with businesses kind of in that capacity, helping them with strategies and content plans and training. And then, as I mentioned, there's a lot of animals in this household. So 2 cats, 2 dogs, and they may or may not pop up as we go through this session. So yeah, this is what we're going to cover today. I want to talk about goals and objectives. I want to share advice from an artist, an Asian artist. I want to help you consider what platform might be best for you. I want to talk about leaning into your Asian heritage and how that can help on social media, ideas to plan and develop content, engage with your audiences, and then we'll do a bit of a Q&A. It's a lot of information. It's going to be a lot of me and my voice, but I know it'll be useful. I hope it'll be useful for you, and yeah, I'm looking forward to doing this. So let's kick it off. Goals and objectives. No matter how experienced you are at social media, or maybe you don't think that you're very experienced at all and you're just starting out, or you only use it kind of just for fun and to talk to family and friends. I cannot stress enough the value as you're thinking about using it more professionally or as an artist for your business, that you need to define what your goals and objectives are for that use. So it's really putting pen to paper, this plan of what you want to get out of using social media, because I think too often people fall into a trap where they think, well, it's just posting a picture. Or I've had, you know, an Instagram account for years. How hard could it be? But it is really different when you're trying to use it from you know, just for fun versus now I'm going to try to use it to help with my livelihood as an artist or as my own business. So that goals and objectives piece is super important. It addresses one of the biggest challenges of using social media, which is how do I know that my post, you know, what I'm sharing, what I'm doing online is actually making an impact? Is this moving the needle where I want it to? How do you know that? Is being on Instagram helpful as an artist? Is posting this picture really actually helping me, you know, engage people? Or getting people to buy something from me, or whatever those goals and objectives are that you are defining. So do you want to use social media to sell your art? Are you using it to make a name for yourself? Do you want to get attention from galleries or local audiences or certain businesses? Do you want to just use it to be inspired by other artists? These are all potential goals that you might have for using social media, and not every artist or every person is going to want to use social for the same reason. So that will change how you use it based on that goal and objective, and that's why it's so important to start with that, or revisit it if you are already, you know, currently using social media as an artist, and maybe you have all of these, you know, ideas or goals in mind, or you've thought about it but you haven't actually ever written it down. And it's really that act of, if someone asked you, you know, why are you using social media as an artist, or what do you hope to get out of it, can you articulate that? Can be a really powerful guiding force for what you do and the decisions that you're making. So some of these questions to sort of prompt you. I think the thing about social media is that it can be very low cost. Usually it's free except for your time, for the most part, but that time can be super, super consuming. So defining those goals and setting, you know, really measurable objectives to achieve them really is meant to make sure that you're not wasting your time. So social media gets more efficient, usually more effective, hopefully more fun when you have an idea of that purpose as success. So if you already have a plan, you've already been doing it for a while, this is sort of your reminder to let's revisit, let's check in, let's see if you think that, you know, you are getting the value that you want out of it. And then if not, or you're brand new, then it's time to actually set that before you sort of dive in. But again, more questions to sort of prompt you as you're thinking about your goals and objectives. Discovery for me, I don't define myself as an artist, but I use social media for my business and for my livelihood, and I work with a lot of businesses that do the same. So for them, for me, discovery is a huge part of using social media, having that online presence, making sure it is one that engages with audiences. It basically ensures that your work is more likely to be discovered, or that you are more likely to be discovered. So that's really that part of that visibility piece is, as an artist who is on social media, who is actively posting, who is actively engaging with people and talking to people and sharing your work, you have more visibility automatically than an artist who is not really active on social media. And so this discovery aspect could probably be one of your goals. And then your objective becomes how you measure that discovery or that visibility. So thinking, you know, if you were starting out today, in a year, what has to happen for you to view that you are now more visible than you were today or a year from now compared to today. And so I have sort of an example of what this process might look like from that social media marketing perspective. So if you're an artist, so I sometimes think that I sort of live and breathe this like strategy, planning, content stuff. So sometimes I feel like is this not obvious? But what I have learned is that usually business owners, or like in this case artists, you are focused on your art, you're focused on your work, you're focused on your product or your service. So you are probably not thinking about all of this strategy and intention and planning that usually should come with a good social media presence. So I wanted to sort of break down, or like peel the curtain back a little bit, to show you what people who do social media full time are often thinking and planning. And yeah, so as an example, maybe the goal is to become more discoverable as an artist. And now you're sort of breaking down, what can you measure to support that goal? Objective 1, I want to reach more people via my social media content. Objective 2, I want to get more commission requests through social media. So those are 2 ways that I'm going to tangibly measure an increased sort of discoverability or visibility of being an artist. And then from there, I'm listing out a few ways I'm going to do that. So my first tactic will be, I'm going to share at least, and I preface this with, I don't want people to get bogged down in like minimums or maximums or requirements of what you should be posting on social media. It's always going to be different. If you've never posted anything, then 1 post a week or a month is going to be way more than you've done in the past. So that's good. That's positive. That's kind of moving in the right direction. But I'm throwing out some minimum numbers here as an example. Maybe you're going to share 3 times on Instagram a week. Maybe you're going to start interacting with social media influencers in your area each week. And that might just be, I'm going to like their posts, I'm going to reply to their story, just for that discoverability, that visibility. Oh, if I'm top of mind for this influencer, maybe that's going to be an opportunity for me as an artist down the road. And then this third sample tactic, maybe it's just local community around me as another way to increase that visibility, because maybe these businesses will want to hire an artist if that's sort of your area of, depending on your area of artistry, but maybe being top of mind for these businesses might lead to some work down the road as well. All of these are just an example. So really it's whatever you want to set. It's just getting you into that intentional thought process of, it's not just, I'm logging on, I'm going to post a picture. It's, why am I logging onto this platform? What type of picture am I posting? How will this picture actually help me achieve, what I'm going to determine as success? So a sample idea of how you might measure the success based on this example is, maybe you're going to look at how many people were reached when you posted something. So there are analytics on social media that will tell you 50 people, saw this post 100 times. So 50 people or the 50 people saw it multiple times. So maybe that's good reinforcement of your art or your work. Maybe you want to grow that number over a period of time. So you start with, I don't know how many people are seeing my content. Maybe you just play around with that for a few months, and then next quarter, now you want to grow that. So you want to grow the average number of people that are seeing your posts. Maybe you're tracking commissions. Maybe you're asking people offline when they, email you or call you or hire you, hey, how did you hear about me? And social media comes up. That's making a note of that helps with that attribution that social media is actually working for you, or that it's actually worth your time or proving to be valuable. So yeah, some examples. Again, everyone's a little different, depends on what your goal is going to be and what you want to get out of it, but just making sure that it's not, I'm gonna post. It's, I am thoughtfully approaching this because I want to try and achieve this. Just kind of pulling back a little bit to be strategic. I'm fairly confident in saying, because I've seen it work for myself, artists, businesses that I work with, that having a social media presence does work. It does sell. It does get you inquiries. It does get you media requests. It does do certain actions depending on what is important to you. But this is a request I actually receive quite often. Who do you recommend? What artists do you recommend? As a content creator, I'm often posting or promoting different arts in my community. And so just kind of by default, businesses who want to hire an artist will message and ask, do you know someone who would be good for this project? Not because I'm an expert in that at all, or because I'm an artist, just because I have posted about artwork before. And so people are trying to think, well, I Googled, artists in this city, and I don't know, maybe I'll ask that person that always posts about artwork. Or books or poetry or whatever the specific type of art is. But the type of people I recommend, or the people that come to mind first for me, are usually ones who have an active social media presence, or a lot of artists don't even have websites. There's a lot of, I think, and this is part of this, digital literacy that goes into that business side of being an artist and being visible and being discovered. But yeah, generally, or I'm quite confident in saying, is that the more easy it is for people to find you online, the more likely you're going to get work or hired as an artist, depending on if that's what you want to use social media for. But that goals and objectives piece really just acts as this roadmap and helps guide you, again, to ensure that you're more visible, you're achieving the goals that you want to achieve, but ultimately is that it's about not wasting your time, because social media can be a huge time waster. And because social media, I don't know if the word game is the right word for it, but just in that context of like a long game or a long con, it's definitely not a con, but like it's a long investment of your time, and things usually do not happen overnight, or success does not pop up overnight, or you're not going to start your account tomorrow and get like 20, people that want to hire you or buy your thing that you're making. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of effort. So when you don't have a roadmap, or you don't have a guide, or you don't have a very clear goal, then you can start to feel very disappointed in what you are seeing, or wondering whether or not your time is worth it. So I wanted to share a bit of advice from an Asian artist locally who lives in Edmonton, where I'm based, because I thought that would be valuable for you. I do think, personally, I reached out to her because I think she has found success using social media, and turns out she agreed. So that's part of what she's going to share. But so her name is Emily Chu. Her account is Hey Emily Chu, Chinese Canadian, posts a lot of illustrations and artwork related to Chinatown in Edmonton, has a lot of Chinatown related projects as well, but also does other types of work, murals, corporate designs, things like that. But yeah, I asked her a few questions about her relationship with social media and what she might share for other artists. And so I pulled out a few. So she wrote, "I'm not an artist who feels at all like I understand or am successful at using social, but it is a tool that has helped me." And so I think that's important to note, is that usually, for the most part, a lot of people who are using social media, they're just taking it day by day. So some of this is a little contradictory, where I say you should have a plan, you should be strategic, you should be intentional, you should know why you're doing this. A lot of accounts also just find success just by doing. So it's not getting bogged down in the planning. It's more that the planning sort of helps you along the way. But for her, it's a tool that has helped, but it's not something that she thinks, oh, I've put a lot of effort and time into this, and I totally understand how the platform and the features work, and I'm really acing this. It's more just, I'm on it, I'm doing it, and I think it has helped me. how has it helped her? Social media has helped me connect and grow my community. She does rely on social media to build community, hire help, and network. She does internship and mentorship calls using social media. And then she also shares a lot of her artwork. So if she was sort of building out, or we were reverse engineering that plan, then her goals and objectives might look like grow community, hire people, hire help, hire or mentor, and share her artwork. And then yeah, I would kind of press further. What do all of those things help you with in the end, that you deem as valuable? Is it that you did get hired to do this mural because people saw that you post murals, or you got hired to lead a Chinatown artist project because people see that you post a lot about Chinatown. And then she wrote, more advice for you is if you're using social media, she thinks you need to find what your perspective is. It's going to be different from other people, other artists. She thinks you should keep it personal. So while you're thinking about this from a professional lens, it's that humanization of yourself and your feelings and your thoughts and your process that really pulls people in and keeps people engaged. And that leans into speaking from the heart, not being fake about it. People can tell generally if you're not being genuine. And people also really love when you are being genuine. So don't be shy about that. Or shy about elaborating on feelings, thought process, especially with artists who are sharing on social media. I find a lot of people, one of your top questions, one of my top questions for artists is, well, why did you do this? Or what does this piece mean to you? Or what inspired you? And so knowing that, you can proactively speak to that as well in your posts. And then remembering to have fun. So Emily was kind of funny because she sort of did reiterate, I don't post X times a week, or I don't try to post at a specific time a day, or I don't try to beat the algorithm, things like that. I'm just trying to do it, which is good and true. But I think, once you get into it, there are some internal social media struggles that you sort of have to balance as well. But don't forget to have fun. And I think that her last thing was that social media needs to be a helpful tool, not a burden. And I go back to the planning piece, as actually it does feel like a burden to start planning because it is a lot of work. But the idea is that kind of proactive, preemptive planning is supposed to lessen the burden that might come later if you're using social media. But if you ever do think, that your use of social media is becoming too much of a burden, it's totally cool to back away, reassess, deactivate, all of those things as well. I do other training on social media, like mental health as well, but that is a topic for another day. Yeah, I want to talk a bit about what you might consider for your platform. I think definitely depends on what type of artist you are. There's lots of social networks out there. Not all of them make sense for all types of artists. And you don't need to be on all of them, or you probably shouldn't be on all of them, because you're going to really pull yourself in lots of directions. These are just a few examples I pulled to talk about, photo-based Instagram, video-based TikTok, although more and more so Instagram is also quite video-based. Twitter, maybe that's more community engagement, conversations. And then even from there, there's platforms just for artists, networking, inspiration, creativity. Maybe it's less about direct engagement, more about artist connection or artist inspiration or discovery. Again, just depends on your art. There's people that live stream certain art, or maybe your work is a bit more static, or maybe, your perspective. Emily talked about perspective. Maybe the perspective you want to share is more of a behind the scenes processy thing. And you want to go that route. Maybe you're more about spoken word. So videos or longer form videos might be something that makes more sense. It really just depends on what you want. So that's why we go back to those goals and objectives that we talk about. So yeah, but I don't know if I can't remember if the examples I use later are more Instagram based. But I'll probably default to talking about Instagram as a place for artists, because that's where I follow the most artists personally, is on Instagram. But the point of me talking about different platforms and what you might want to consider is that you should, depending on where you are, what platform you're using, is that you should be changing your approach depending on that. So how you might use Twitter should probably be different than how you might use an Instagram or a TikTok. And so your audience might be different, the expectations might be different, the features available to you will be different. So it shouldn't just be a copy paste splat across the board, trying to fit like a square into a circle peg. You should be approaching it quite differently. And yeah. Often, as a social media person, I wear a lot of hats. When you use social media as an artist or for your business, you probably also have to end up being a photographer, a copywriter, a videographer, an art director. Like there's probably a different type of art. Maybe you more focus on photos, but now you're using social media, so you have to figure out what the heck am I going to say in this caption as well. So I think the exciting part, but also the time consumption part and the hard part about social media is that you end up having to be so many different things when you're using it to promote yourself and your business. And maybe these aren't your areas of expertise, is that it can be quite hard. And so that's why, maybe don't stretch yourself so thin trying to do all the different social media all at once. Prioritizing the platform that you're on can help keep this symbolic battery of yours more charged. I'm not going to say fully charged, but less charged. And then I did want to point out, although it does contradict what I have just said, which is not stretching yourself thin by being on multiple platforms, is kind of picking one and doing it really well, is I do always like to caution and warn artists and businesses, is that you don't own these social networks, you don't own your accounts, algorithms change, platforms change, owners of platforms change. So like, for instance, Elon Musk now owns Twitter, so it's a completely different vibe and things are going very badly over there. But that caution, that warning, is that while you want to use social media to increase your visibility and reach audiences and people and community, you also want to think about, not just putting everything in your social media basket. It's how can you use social media well to achieve these things, but then like convert people or bring people to your website, your blog, maybe you do an email newsletter, things that you own versus only relying on social media. Because a lot of businesses and people have been burned. You log in one day and you've been hacked, and now you've lost all of the things that you've done on social media for the last few years, etc. But yeah, some things to think about. So I wanted to talk about leaning into your heritage, especially as this is focused on Asian artists. And I'll share a few examples of what I mean. I guess really the main thought for me here, and it kind of ties to just the idea of representation, is that I think it's very exciting that social media allows people to discover artists who are like them. So not unlike, seeing Asian actors on screen, it's very exciting to me as a Vietnamese Canadian that I can follow Vietnamese artists who are creating Vietnamese themed or cultural art that matters to me. And so it can be quite niche and quite specific. It's not that only Vietnamese people are following this person, Stacy, who's a Vietnamese artist. It's not only Vietnamese people who are following her, but certainly it's a lot of Vietnamese people who are following her because they're very excited. I mean, I speak for myself, but also, for people who follow her and engage with her and buy her artwork, is that it's very exciting and I think different. 10 years ago, without social media, how hard would it have been for me to find a Vietnamese artist to support, or someone illustrating something that's maybe very close to my heart, because it represents something that my family does or a tradition that we do for New Year's. It would be so hard to find that, and then just delighted now that there are, because of social media and being visible online, has just made it so much easier to find artists, again, who can kind of represent my feelings, represent my thoughts, represent my traditions. So that's sort of like, so that's what I mean, is that, you're an artist, but also you're an Asian artist. So are there Asian, art things that you can lean on? Is that your perspective? Is that something that you can share? So this example, she did custom New Year's lucky envelopes, but in these designs for the year of the cat, which is different from the Chinese zodiac this year, was the year of the rabbit. So even something like that subtlety or difference in this Vietnamese artist knows that Vietnamese people are ringing in the year of the cat, not the year of the rabbit, by creating these illustrations of Vietnamese food and Vietnamese cats. It's going to really speak to that subset of people who aren't looking for Year of the Rabbit, products or content or art. They're looking for Year of the Cat stuff. And she kind of fills that niche because she, is Vietnamese and she knows that. And so, yeah, that representation and understanding of that culture, and then how that is then portrayed in her work and what she shares on social media, is so cool. So I can't remember how I found her. I think I was following another Asian, Instagram account, and then they posted that she was doing these Vietnamese lucky envelopes, and then I clicked and I was like, oh my god, I love her style. Oh cool, she's Vietnamese. Oh wow, she's selling these. And so I bought them as well, and that was just all facilitated through social media. Another thing that I like to, maybe your art, I do think, podcasting and interviewing and kind of audio and visual arts is art. But yeah, maybe it's a podcast or some type of education piece that you're doing. I love following the Vietnamese podcast. I actually don't listen to the podcast, but I love to follow their account because they share what they talk about on the podcast in like these very bite-sized posts on social media. So again, a New Year example, they talked about Vietnamese, the Lunar New Year, but we call it that, traditions, do's and don'ts. And so they created illustrations and tips and little like Instagram slides that you can consume and share about different Vietnamese traditions during the holiday. So again, just from that cultural perspective, I feel like there's a huge subset of Asian Canadians in particular who want to connect with their heritage and who want to learn more about their culture. And there's a lot of that probably we will and can get from our parents and our family, but we're also all on social media. And so I can't follow fast enough a social media account that is sharing, how to speak Vietnamese or Vietnamese traditions or et cetera, et cetera. So just, again, that idea of leaning into whatever your heritage is, how it relates and makes sense with the artwork that you're sharing or the art that you're doing. And then knowing that there is a community of people that want to see that, want to consume that, want to share that, and then want to be part of that community that you're building. Courtney on design is a queer Korean American designer and illustrator, and so her whole account is all about, she's quite political, which we'll go into some of my next points, but yeah, she does tons of different artwork specifically related to issues or stances or political things, social awareness, what it means to be queer, what it means to be trans in America. So again, this isn't necessarily the Korean heritage that she's leaning into, but certainly that personal perspective of hers, and how it relates to her and why it matters to her, and then translating that into the content that she shares. And then another Nisha Patel is an author, a poet, a spoken word artist in Edmonton. And again, uses her social media to, share her art, share where she's speaking, share mock-ups of artwork that she's doing, promoting her chapbooks, lots of different, and a lot of her content does very much lean, a lot of her art, take social media out of it, a lot of her art leans into her experience as an Indian Canadian. Disappointments from mom and Indian food, and just perspectives of her culture is what her artwork is very, very focused on. But she also then takes that and translates that into social media content as well. And you can do it too. But yeah, so I sort of mentioned the political part with Courtney. But getting political, I would say, is also getting visible. And I guess I'll use myself as an example. Is in the last few years, I have started posting, again, not an artist, but using social media to post about political issues, stances, social issues, things that are affecting my community locally, or my Asian community, or my Asian heritage. And truly, some of my very most far-reaching, far engaging, most visible type of posts in the last few years are these ones where I reiterate a stance, or I take a stance, or I am political. And they say, I think the phrase is something like, it's a privilege to not be political, or something like everything is political. Life is political. And I think probably maybe artists know this better than anyone, is often artwork is a commentary on politics, or on community, or on issues. But yeah, considering how you might translate that into social media can, not be political to get more social media followers, but know that social media communities are craving that. They want your stance. They want to know what your views are. They want, also from a social media perspective, it's not even that they want you to be political. It's that they're searching for content, often artwork and social media content, that can help them express themselves. And so that's where I found that a lot of artists have really been able to increase their visibility and engagement quite quickly, is when, like Courtney, the queer Korean American artist, her entire Instagram account is literally graphics and illustrations and designs and statements that speak out about political issues. And that might not be a fit for you, but just knowing that this, as an artist, she's found a way to get a lot of visibility quite quickly on a lot of different topics on social media, because people are looking for well, how do I express this? Or how do I tell people to go vote? Or how do I tell people that I don't agree with, what's going on with abortion in the States? Like, I can't find the words to do it. I'm not an artist. Oh, there is this artist who does great work and has already put in, into words and illustrations what I want to say. Now I can just share that. So as an example, it's not make sure you're political in order to get visible, but it's it's try knowing if it makes sense, if it feels genuine, if it feels natural, knowing that finding this political sort of vibe for your artwork probably will lead to some good engagement and reach for you. Yeah. Okay, so just a few tips or thoughts on developing content. I want you to know that there's no perfect social media posts. You could say 5 words, you could say 1,000 words, you could use a graphic, you could use a photo of yourself, and maybe all of those do really well, or maybe all of those tank. That's just kind of the nature of social media, and I like to encourage people to just experiment. Try something different, next week or next month versus what you tried last week or last month. And you really define what success looks like. So again, depending on your goals, really you're just using social media to meet other artists and be inspired by other artists, then your success is going to look very, very different from someone who is actively trying to sell their art or trying to network to get hired, things like that. So it just really depends on what it is you're looking for. When you're developing your content, you should ask who you're talking to, what do you want them to do, what approach will you take, what features do you have available to you on the platform that you're on, how will you best get your message across. I'm just hearing some ding dongs, so I'm going to make sure my do not disturb is on. Yeah, a lot of people struggle, if the writing part is not part of your art, then you may struggle with that piece, captions, communicating through words, which all social networks generally have a piece where you need to write something. So I say borrow from journalists, who, what, where, when, why, how does your caption or your video or your photo or whatever it is you're sharing, cover some of these things that can help you write. I do recommend, to get you focused, to get you going, to start something called a content calendar. And that really is, I got to remember on Wednesdays, Thursday, Friday, that's when I'm going to post on social media. If we go back to what Emily said, that can become a burden and feel like a burden. I really only suggest this, if you don't have, if your current social media use is very chaotic and unorganized, this is a good place to sort of bring it in and find some consistency, and then you'll just sort of grow and figure it out as you go. But it never hurts to have a few days or ideas kind of in mind. And yeah, so I'm just going to leave this on the screen real quick. Just some content ideas of things that you can share. Experiment with video. I think in general, social media has been shifting towards more video. I know a lot of people and artists and businesses who hate this because again, if video isn't your area of expertise, then it's another thing that you have to teach yourself. But I think again, the point is experiment and don't be afraid to try something just to see how it does. There are hashtags that you can use on social media, which just, again, helps with that visibility and discoverability. There's also useful versus useless hashtags. So depending on the type of art, the community you're trying to reach, locally, there's probably specific hashtags that make sense for you versus very broad hashtags that won't really get your content seen by who you want it to be seen by. All social networks include analytics that you can review. Again, this adds to the burden and the work, but it's good to know, oh, wow, I have a ton of people following me from, Toronto. That's great. I'm a Toronto artist, so that makes sense. But if you're getting people that aren't from Toronto, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why it's resonating. So you can kind of start to make these assumptions and other things that can help inform your content. And then I like to include this one of this crying cat is again that burden, that bogged down, feeling deterred if you're not maybe seeing success right away or too much success. And again, I mentioned the social media mental health can be, very. There's lots of stories of how artists sort of lose their creativity or inspiration, or they just feel like they're just adding to the machine, or they don't want to do certain art anymore because it doesn't get likes, things like that. These are all natural things or feelings that can arise, but just a reminder at that point to kind of maybe step back and reassess and know that you're not alone, that lots of people are going through that. Okay, so I think I'm almost out of time. We're gonna do some questions. But I did have some other slides, so I think I'm just gonna skip through them. And then, oh no, I'm so close. Okay, I'm just gonna do it. So engaging with audiences, I just wanted to remind you that you shouldn't just be self-promoting yourself. Social media is great for self-promotion, and especially as an artist in a business, you should be using it to promote your work and talk about your work. But you shouldn't just be shouting and broadcasting your art and your messages. That's where, at the beginning of the talk, I mentioned, oh, maybe you're going to engage with businesses. Maybe you're going to engage with influencers. So talking to people is also part of social media work, which is why sometimes it can feel like you're wasting time because you're just chatting with people. But that's really effective. Every time I have an online chat with an artist, I feel like I'm a little closer with that artist, and I feel like I want to support them more after we've had our little chat. Take advantage of interactive features depending on the platform you're using. This is an Instagram example. Lots of different ways to engage. Let your audience ask you questions, do polls, do quizzes, ask people to share photos about a specific topic, etc. Just finding ways to kind of interact more. And then I mentioned, when I'm talking to artists, I really feel connected to them. Just this idea of over time, you should be identifying and then trying to empower people who are your advocates. So people who regularly comment on your stuff, people who regularly like or message you on social media, people who recommend you for work, etc. Is that you should make sure that you're fostering or building that relationship with them. And the last thing before questions is just sharing some takeaways or tangible takeaways. Again, if it's too many things, you don't want to hate using social media, or if it's too much of a burden, then scrap it. But yeah, consider all one of these things. But the biggest one is sort of that plan, making a plan, defining how you're going to use it, deciding which platforms you're going to focus on. I am suggesting creating a 1-month content plan just to experiment with what would it be like if I use social media very intentionally versus just using social media chaotically. Defining what leaning into your heritage looks like for you in a genuine way. And also defining what your stances and views are that make sense to talk about or portray on social media, again, in a way that is genuine and makes sense. Try some video, try to talk to people, try some different tools to help you with using social media, and then checking your analytics. So then you can sort of start coming up with or seeing patterns or trends to help you make more decisions on how you want to use social. And that is it. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Either other artists or other businesses that might be aligned to the work that you're doing. Sometimes these folks or these different entities will engage and or won't engage. Maybe like talk a bit about that, because I feel like there's also this kind of like gray boundary of like, when is it okay to like start privately chatting with people and or not, and or when they put when they comment on something but they're not really opening the door for a DM, when, or what
Mhm.
kind of clues should get you into that engagement phase? Yeah.
Yeah, so something that I do or that I try to do for all of my posts, personally, is that I try to reply to everyone who leaves a comment. And sometimes it's not like a very uh in-depth response. It might just be a couple of emojis or whatever, but I think it's important, and I think what I've seen from my community and my audience is that they really appreciate that the person that they're following, and let's say in the case of artists, the artist that they're following or the artist that they want to support is actually acknowledging, that they're supporting them or acknowledging that they exist. And I don't think you can quite quantify what that means for them or what they'll do for you down the road, in that support. And I do get, so same thing, in if you get a direct message or a question or a comment, for me it's super important that I reply. Sometimes I don't reply for a few days, because again, it can be time consuming, but I always try to make a point to respond. And I regularly get people that say, wow, I'm so surprised that you responded to me. And so yeah, so it's just that I think that just sparks something that makes them just a little bit more loyal, and a little bit more supportive. And again, if we're talking about like identifying and empowering your advocates or building up, that community, is a very simple comment back, a very simple reply back might make the difference between someone recommending you as an artist or someone wanting to hire you, or someone who works at a place and got a grant and was like, oh, I know exactly who I want to work on this, because they're so nice to me on social media. And I think with social media, there's always this balance of, you don't want to be artificially nice to someone to get them to do something for you, but just if you approach it, I think from that lens of acknowledgement and kindness, then you should just see that benefit back anyways. But yeah, so I think that's if people are commenting and replying to you already. But really, like, I think now it's so common just for anyone to just reply to someone's story, right? And that's something that artists can do. And I think I always usually recommend engaging locally. So you sort of kind of set what your boundaries are. And so for me, I'm very cool to engage with people who live in my city. That's kind of the boundary that I've set. If they live in my city and, they don't look like they're kind of weird or stalkery or something, then yeah, for sure, I'm gonna reply or engage with this person, or maybe I'll even follow them. That's a personal preference for people, but usually, okay, they live in my city, they live in my province, they work in my industry. So like, what are kind of the tiers or the levels, I guess, that you're comfortable with? And then you start from those as, yeah, I'm happy to engage with these people because we have that common, that common connection because we live here or we work here or we know someone. And then, yeah, and then literally it might just be liking something, it might just be commenting, but people do notice, on social media. You might not think that they notice, but they definitely do. And yeah, and I think that those benefits will come back to you, even if you don't feel like the like that you're giving someone means something at the moment. Like sometimes I'll just randomly remember, oh right, that person had left a message about this, and then I'll try to dig it back. But yeah, I think that, and then I think there are trends, and I guess there's like data and studies that show that private engagement is way more important these days than like what is being shared publicly. So you don't know how many people are engaging with artists privately, and what value that brings, but you should try doing it, is sort of what I'm saying. But like on Instagram as an example as well, there's the save button. You can bookmark posts, and you can also send posts to people. And so let's say 10 years ago, like engagement metrics that would be valuable would be things like a public like or a public comment. And now a lot of businesses are looking at those private engagements. Oh, wow, this post was sent like 100 times. This obviously resonated with people. Why? And so you start kind of digging into that, or who's sending this, or who's sharing this, or what, how did this make people feel, or why did they bookmark it? But a lot of, I think there's more evidence or data to sort of support that private engagement really builds a lot of the loyalty. And I actually think artists or individuals as an account, it's a lot easier and less, like, let's say, creepy or feels less forced to engage with people on social media than like if you were a storefront trying to do that. So artists, I think, have an advantage in that, is that you're probably already a person and it's normal for people to engage with people on social media, less of a leap than if you were posting as like a business. That can sometimes feel more forced, but I think as an individual, it can be much smoother.
Yeah. I think, you mentioned a bit about how there are certain kind of tricks within analytics to help increase certain things that, the people that are following you want to see more of. Can you talk a bit more, maybe even through the context of Instagram, or, a platform like Instagram, where there are these kind of ways or to kind of track engagement and or track likes and stuff like that? What are some like really baseline things or functions within like Instagram that you really should kind of keep track of, outside of like what we already know in terms of like the amount of likes that you can get on a post? Are there some more like, just like deeper things that people should be diving into their account to look out for, to help kind of prompt like maybe ideas for future posts?
Yeah, so if we're using Instagram as an example, so to get free analytics on Instagram, you have to make your account either a professional business account, or they have a label called a creator account. So these are really easy to change. You just go into your settings and you change it. And then it'll start collecting your data, your analytics from there. So for every post, you can see how many users, how many individual unique users saw your post. So from there, you can start to see, oh, that's weird that, why did this one get so many more than this one? And you can start to see what I had mentioned earlier is like, oh, actually this was shared 50 times. Like people sent this to someone, or they shared it on their story 50 times. So you can start to see that. You can start to see how many people saved the post. Some people and businesses I've seen intentionally have those call to actions to increase that engagement, but also to kind of measure to see what actions people are willing to do. Is so you can say bookmark this post, for Valentine's Day, ahead of Valentine's Day, or share this post with, a loved one or something like that. So you can start playing around with that and seeing if including your call to actions increases the actions that people take. You can see impressions, which is how many times a post was viewed. So it's usually going to be a little higher than the individual users reached, because you might have one person that decides to look at your posts a few times. What else can you see? On Instagram, you can see the best time of day to post. So that question comes up a lot, is should I post at 1, at 10 o'clock at night? Like, what's a good time to post? And I usually like to recommend, if you Google that question, there will be recommendations. But I like to look at specifically for your account, once you've sort of been posting, let's say for a week or a month, and you've got followers, then it will give you best times for your followers. So it's always better when you can look at, well, when are my followers active? When are my followers online? And you can kind of make your decisions around posting based on that, versus like a broader, everyone post at 4. But yeah, so you can see that, which I think is cool. I mentioned, oh, maybe all of your followers are from Toronto. That is something that you can see. So you can get analytics for location as well as analytics for age. So you might think it's weird. Oh, that's weird that I have a lot of 54 plus followers. But maybe you use that information and you lean on that. And then maybe, how you use social media changes because you have more of like an adult or elderly population that's following you on social media. And then something I like to recommend for analytics in general is because it can just be a lot of numbers. And so usually I find like what's a more tangible or helpful thing to do with your analytics. And if we're using Instagram again as an example, it does show you what were my top posts in the last month. So then you can kind of see, okay, these are my 5 most popular posts. What about them? Why them? And you can kind of see, are there patterns? Are there trends? Were they all political? Were they all about this? Were they all videos? And then you can kind of start making decisions about, okay, well, next month I'll just do only videos then, because last month only videos were my top posts. For instance, that might be something that you do. And then with the top posts, I always look at what were my worst performing posts. I think it's good to look at, not necessarily that I would call them your failures, but yeah. So if like these did really well, let's see what didn't do well, and then again, same process. Well, why didn't these do well? Oh, is it because, this was mainly text, or was it because, this was a blurry photo, something like that. So yeah, so the numbers are good if you can make sense of the numbers. But I think very helpful is figuring out, what seems to be resonating with people and then trying to figure out why. And some of that is, it can be very anecdotal and it can just be you guessing. You might be making some educated guesses, hopefully, but it's still helpful to get into that process versus I'm just posting and,
It's going to
not.
be cats. It's going to
Yeah.
be all your favorite posts are going to be cats and dogs.
Yeah, exactly. And you might see that. You're like, wow, okay, anytime I post a dog, it goes through the roof. But again, so there's another artist, I didn't include it in this presentation, but I had talked to a different artist about his social media use. And something he had mentioned was he felt at one point that he was falling into this like trap of only posting things that did well. And so he found that that was affecting his artwork as well. So he doesn't only want to create art that will do well on social media. So it's finding that balance, but not only doing that for the likes.
Yeah, I really appreciate that your work also spans into talking about mental health. You have mentioned, especially for a lot of like new people, they may be discouraged. They don't want to put as many hours in. And so we've kind of talked a bit more about just like the uptake or like getting into it, which can be difficult. But there's also like the other side of it, like where we hear about like social media addiction. So, is there some way to kind of also know when that is starting to become an issue? Yeah, like anything that you can share where, yeah, like it could be impacting like maybe even like your practice because you're just so, you're on social media all the time.
Yeah, I think like the easiest sign or way to figure it out is if you're just not feeling how do you feel when you're on social media. And I think there's like a degree of people joke like, oh, I hate using social media, or oh, I have to use social media for my job, which is different, I think, than you're using it and you just feel like crap, or or you're seeing posts from, let's say, other artists that seem to be doing very well, or oh my god, how did they get 1,000 likes on this and I only got 5 on mine? So like when you start to see yourself comparing yourself to other people, when you start feeling, pretty crappy, when you walk away from, when you close the app and you don't feel good, those are, I think, probably the most obvious signs that your relationship might not be the healthiest that it could be on social media. But yeah, I mean, I think I don't want to say it's obvious. And
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's like, and it's tricky again because so many people have to use social media for work, or it
Mhm.
becomes this like necessity to try and, well, I have to be visible as an artist on social media, but it makes me feel like crap. But yeah, I don't think you have to be on it. I think there's many benefits to being on it and many opportunities, but you really got to weigh that with how you feel. And for me, social media was always a hobby first. For me, I was always very interested in being online just for fun. And now it's my full time job. And so the balance is very poor. And honestly, I feel overwhelmed quite often. And I'm let's say always on my phone or always on my computer. And there are some days that are like better or worse than others, but I still really enjoy being on social media, and despite it, like being work and play and all day, things like that. But I think there are easier, ways to see that is that, and then there's steps that you can take as well. So like I probably go through some up and downs when I use social media. And I've also compared myself to other people on social media, or I find that, there's a few people that I follow who actually, when they post, it makes me feel bad. And so when you start to recognize that, it's like, you know what, I'm going to unfollow them, or I'm going to block them, or I'm going to mute them. So there's different tools you can take for sure. And then I find that makes me feel a lot better. So there's like a phrase on social media called like a hate follow. So people will sometimes follow people because, maybe they're, from the artist perspective, maybe this is a very popular or like recognized artist within your field. And it's like, well, of course, everyone likes this person, so I should probably follow them. And then you just find that actually their posts make you feel mad. And it's like, no, you don't have to hate follow them. Yeah, so some simple steps I think you can take, but it's really just recognizing how you're feeling while you're scrolling, while you're posting, and then after you log off as well.
Hmm. And so, thank you so much for, sharing that and being vulnerable about sharing your experience of the ups and downs, because I'm sure, like everyone else, like we do have those. It's not always just a purely positive space, and not that it has to be all the time, because I think that it delivers also some really important news that can be very political, can also be very negative, but informing as well, right? So when folks are starting to like tap into and start to feel that negativity, are there some things that you like to do as a way to kind of, you know, deep, just detox, or just change it up? Yeah, any kind of recommendations when folks are kind of hitting those lows?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like a silly solution to social media, let's say hitting a social media wall is to use social media. But for example, I really love, and everyone's, let's say TikTok algorithm is going to be different, but my TikTok just shows me a lot of really cute dog and cat videos. It's like 90% of it is just adorable animal content. So like when I know that I want to laugh, then I'm just gonna go on TikTok for like 10 minutes. So it's kind of, yeah, it's sort of finding whether it's using more social media or not, but it's knowing like what does bring you, some happiness or some joyful moments, and then logging on to a different thing to do that. And I think it's very natural for people to have platforms that is what they use for work, so they have to, and then platforms that actually, make them happy, or maybe it's just chatting with friends or leaving your house or whatever those things are, to do that. But yeah, for me, like something like throwing on TikTok for 5 minutes and watching dogs and cats do things is a nice break. But yeah, I think I also hear how, you know, funny it is to like take a break from social media by using more social media. So everyone's gonna be a little different, I think. But honestly, the blocking, the muting accounts really made a difference for it's. And it's not like I had a ton of. I didn't have a ton of accounts I was following that was making me feel really bad. But you start to there as the more you use it, I think you start to identify that sort of bad feeling for certain posts or certain feeds. And so yeah, when it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, it's like it's amazing what it does for your feelings when you don't see it.
Yeah. All right. Well, to wrap up, I think for a lot of the audiences new to social media, you mentioned that there are so many hats that you end up wearing. You know, maybe you're starting to dip into photography, writing, video. Do you have any recommendations on resources or like good places that would be helpful to kind of level up on some of these skills?
Yes. So I really love, again, it's more of an Instagram resource. But I love a company slash blog called Later. So it's later.com. They also have a newsletter, but they send out so many different, or they post so many different resources about here's how you do this on Instagram. Here's how you create this thing. Here's how you do this video. Here's tips for this. So I think they're a great resource. I always say, and it sounds really silly, because like my profession is, you know, involves training people, but almost all answers you can find on Google. So yeah, so like don't be shy. And the specificity, like you can be so specific. I had a feature that just disappeared from my account in December just randomly, and I didn't know why, and there was no explanation. And I Googled, like this feature disappeared in December, and there was literally like articles about it disappearing in December. So yeah, so you can find a lot of resources there. So I like Later, but even all of the platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter and TikTok, they have help pages, resource pages, tips and advice for creators, businesses, that sort of thing, that are all available. Facebook also has like a academy, like an online academy, a free academy that with different courses that you can take to learn. Again, that's very specific to Facebook, which might not be relevant, let's say, for you as an artist or your business. But yeah, there's lots of Google is your best friend.
I actually this brings up a last question, and I think it, probably good for folks, especially if they're just starting. Anything to look out for when it does come to folks that are, concerned about security or surveillance or anything like that? Anything helpful to kind of.
Yeah, so I always recommend people turn on their two-factor authentication. So this is a feature on all social networks where basically you add your phone number to it, or your email, and then anytime, whether yourself or someone else is trying to log into your account, then they'll send you a text or an email to confirm that it's actually you. And it really has saved so many people's butts from being hacked, because there's a lot of spam and there's a lot of hackers trying to get your stuff online. So yeah, that's a super, super simple thing that you can do. I think the only downfall is like if you ever lost your phone and then they texted you, you might be screwed. So there's that option. But yeah, but I always recommend that. And then the more you use the platforms, you start to notice. I mean, I would recommend you start to kind of notice more of like the ways that people are trying to get your information, or someone might message you and ask you to click a link, and or the link might get you to try to log back into Instagram. So there is a lot of, I think, safety and privacy concerns that go hand in hand with using social media. I'm a like and again, it's sort of what you sort of set. So for me, like if we're talking about how I'm like, oh, I'll engage with people who live in my city, that's a thing that I've set for myself. You can have your own set of rules when it comes to sort of privacy or what you share. Like a lot of people I know who use social media, they don't share pictures of their kids, and that's the thing that they've set. I what did I just do? Oh yeah, I was doing some tourism work and I was staying at a hotel. And so I was sharing about the hotel because that was part of the tourism work, but I didn't say what the hotel was yet. I was like, I'll say where it is once I'm gone, which is different. Like if I'm in another country, I don't necessarily expect someone to show up, but it was a hotel 2 hours from, Edmonton, which is where I am. So it's very realistic that someone could just show up at the hotel. So yeah, so things like that. I had posted a video where I partnered with a bank, and they gave me a debit card to include in the video, but it wasn't a real debit card. But so I had included a shot of the card, and someone messaged and said, is that your real debit card? Because you shouldn't be sharing your card number. I was like, no, it's a dummy card. It's fine. But things like that. So
Yeah.
like knowing I'm not including my house number. I'm not sharing the community I live in. I'm gonna post about this 2 days later when I'm not there anymore. So you sort of kind of define your own privacy or what you're comfortable. Because I know a ton of people who are always talking about the community they live in, and I don't like to do that, but lots of people are like, so if we use like an example in Edmonton, lots of people live in Oliver, and Oliver's really not that big. But they're like, oh, I'm at the Oliver Community Hall, oh, I'm visiting this thing in Oliver, oh, I'm so proud to live in Oliver. And so for me, that's like flags for me, is that I'm not sharing where I live, like, or even close to where I live. But yeah, so you kind of set and define what you're comfortable with, but it is very, I think the dangers are very real, especially if you are going to be using social media for more politics or like taking stances or social issues. Then there's a lot of unfortunately bad people that sort of come out of the woods, and they'll look for things like that, like have you ever shared where you live, and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's there are ways around it. You just yeah, how do I
Set
keep my
your
accounts
boundaries.
secure?
Yeah.
Yeah, and your boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Linda, for sharing all your knowledge today and joining us. We're so grateful to have you, and we're also really grateful for the support of Canada Council for the Arts and Festival Access SZ to making this CanAsian Arts Network project possible. If you are an Asian Canadian artist looking for more support, visibility, and community connections, we'd love to invite you to join the free network at www.canasianarts.com and follow us on our social media platforms. We hope this online workshop has been helpful for your artistic journey, and for more in-depth discussion about all the stuff regarding social media and digital marketing, log into CanAsian Arts Network to access our online groups and go to social media and digital marketing. So see you online. Thanks so much.
Bye. Thank you.